We're live.
All right, welcome everybody to House Energy and Digital Infrastructure. It's Wednesday, January 21, and we are in the first couple weeks of the session just checking in with all of our utilities to get an update and see how they're doing. So we're here today with two of our co-ops. We'll just go around the table and introduce ourselves and then turn it over to you. So I'm Rep. Kathleen James from the Bennington 4 District.
Scott Campbell from St. Johnsbury.
Richard Bailey, Lamoille 2.
Chris Morrow, Wyndham, Windsor, Benny. Michael Southworth, Caledonia 2.
Christopher Howland, Rutland 4.
Dara Torrey, Washington 2.
Graham Kleppner, Chittenden 13, Burlington.
Laura Sibilia, 2.
Great, and in the room.
Charlotte May, legislative intern.
Great.
Dana Lee Perry, Nebraska.
Andrea Cohn from Mon Electric Cooperative. Rebecca Town from Mon Electric Cooperative.
Gabrielle Molina with Downs Rockland Martin and Vermont Electric and Weber.
All right, for the record then.
Good morning. Louis Porter, General Manager of Washington Electric Co-op. Sorry to be presumptuous and sit down before we started here, but I wanted to make sure I could get the technology to work.
Yeah, no, that's
Sometimes a problem for me.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me, and happy to see you all. A couple of you are members, so thank you for being Washington Electric Co-op members. Not that you have a choice in a regulated distribution utility territory, but we're still glad that you are. I'm just going to go through a couple of slides, and mostly would like to have a conversation about Washington Electric, where we stand right now, and our long-term position, our long-term challenges that we face, and how we're trying to address them. So please interrupt me if you have questions or you want to talk about anything where you don't understand something, and happy to have a discussion about anything. And if I don't have answers for you, I will get back to you with them. We had an extraordinarily good year in 2025, one of the best years the co-op's experienced, maybe ever in its 86-year history. We had no major storms, which stands in stark contrast to recent years, and we've had typically had at least one storm that cost over $1 million a piece to do power restoration. And that was especially welcome when we are uncertain about FEMA reimbursements. We are very grateful and rely to a large extent on FEMA reimbursements for major storms that meet the category, and we as other public entities are very nervous about future of FEMA for reimbursements and whether we're going to be able to count on those or not. We also had a cold and snowy start to the year. Washington Electric has a very, very high penetration of net metering, and for net metering members, they don't pay the cost of their electricity because they're producing their own. They also don't pay the cost of providing them electrical service. So those first couple of months in the year in which we had relatively high usage and low net metering helped us out. We also had near or above record production at our Coventry landfill gas to energy plant that takes the methane from the Coventry landfill and produces electricity from it, and covers 65% plus of the electricity that our members use. And it's very valuable to us. It was a gamble when we built it in 2005, and it's very valuable to us, both because the price of that power once RECs are sold is very reasonable, and also because it's not only renewable, but it's 24/7 power, baseload renewable power, which is quite rare and quite valuable, quite important when you have an increasing share of the grid supply coming from intermittent sources. Over the last decade or more, we've had clean audits from our auditors. We have had a few adjustments in those following those audits, late invoices that have come in after the end of the year, minor mistakes in terms of where we had put accounted for funds, but no significant findings in our audits going back a decade or more. And Washington Electric is not bond rated because we borrow the money that we borrow primarily from the Rural Utility Service from the federal government. So instead of bond rating, we have to meet lender metrics. Basically, they look at the health of our revenue versus our expenses and our interest that we have to pay on debt. And it's sort of the federal government's version of a bond rating. And we have met those metrics in recent years consistently. We are in the fortunate place because of Coventry. We tend to be on a little bit of a different cycle in terms of rate cases than our sibling utilities. But we have no rate increase planned for 26, and are hoping to avoid a rate case in 27, although it's possible we'll have a minor one. That is in part due to the fact that we've been able to defer a little over $1 million in revenue from 2025 into 2026 for those reasons that I talked about before. Basically, what that means is we had more than enough margin to meet our accounting metrics, our lender covenants from the federal government, and that allowed us to count some of that revenue in this year instead of in last year, which will help us avoid a rate case.
Rep. Kleppner?
$1 million coincidentally matches what it cost to recover from a big storm. Is the fact you didn't have any storms last year what gave you that $1 million to move forward?
It's a large part of it. That $1 million to recover from a big storm, a lot of that is paid back typically by FEMA. So it's not a direct one-to-one comparison because, 65-70% of those large storms are often paid back to us from FEMA. So it's not a direct one-to-one, but certainly that was a factor of our net metering production, lower production and the high Coventry production.
Thank you.
I just have a quick logistical thing. Alex, can you click off the button that says this meeting is being live streamed? Thanks. Rep. Morrow.
A couple of small questions. Can you repeat what you said about net metering at the beginning?
Sure.
I didn't understand the dynamics.
Yeah. So we have, like most utilities in Vermont, we have a customer charge and then we charge for the electricity that people use. The electricity charge includes not just the cost of us purchasing that electricity, or in our case, making that electricity. It also includes some of the costs for distributing that electricity, for paying for line crews and, me and trucks and all the other things we pay for. So when members offset the electric portion of their bill, they are avoiding some costs of providing them service, even though of course we have to provide them service as we do others.
Mm-hmm.
So we estimate there's a little bit less than $1 million a year cost shift from net metering members to non-net metering members.
How much?
About $1 million, about $900,000 annually, and that's after the net metering power has value to us and value to the other members, and it has more value than just the raw kilowatt hours produced because you can avoid transmission costs and other costs. But even after all that's taken into account, we estimate it's a little bit less than $1 million cost shift.
Rep. Sveely?
So, Louis, I just want to make sure I understand that that's proportionally higher than most of the utilities.
Yeah,
That shift.
I think Hardwick maybe close to us in terms of net metering penetration. The combination for us that's challenging is we have about 10% of our members net meter, and we have a very highly rural and residential territory. So those two things combined put a bit of a squeeze on us.
You are talking about line hardening.
Yes, I haven't gotten there yet.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, then I'll hold my.
All right. So that nice segue into my next point, which is we've done a lot of in the midst of doing a lot of construction in our territory. We have about $11 million construction work plan with the Rural Utility Service, which is our federal lenders over the next 4 years. In addition to that, we have a FEMA mitigation project, which we're just wrapping up now. This is separate from the money that FEMA gives us to pay back for storm damage. It's money they give up, they provide to public entities to offset the costs of projects that will lower outages in the future. So we got about just under $600,000 from them for a project in East Montclair, which we're wrapping up. And our work in that area is a combination of replacing lines that exist now with standard construction, replacing lines with cable spacer construction, Hendrix construction, which is Basically those, if you're driving down, in GMP builds this way a lot, these two projects are our first foray into this construction. But if you see that tight, diamond shaped, electrical lines where you have a messenger, a wire across the top that's not energized, and you have the three phases and the other corners of the bracket, that's a Hendrix or a line spacer construction. These two projects in Greensboro and East Montpelier are our first foray into that type of construction. The advantages are it's tighter, and less spread out than a typical cross arm construction, so less likely to be hit by trees. And probably even more important, it has that messenger wire at the top that can deflect trees that hit the wire and maybe protect the wires underneath from getting hit. Same reason that the telephone lines go out less often than the electrical lines, because the electrical lines shield them from above. So this is new for us. We're trying it out. The downside is it can be more difficult to work on. And so we're trying it out on these two projects and seeing how it goes. We also underground fair amount of our work, particularly new line extensions and feeders, secondary lines from the last pole to the houses we underground at the request of members fairly often, and anticipate doing more undergrounding.
Is that, so the undergrounding, are you charging members for that?
When it's a new line extension, we charge the member. And if it's us undergrounding it as part of one of these grant funded projects, we would not.
Yep, a couple more. Rep Southworth, Rep Bailey.
So when you do the underground from the pole to the house, used to be that the owner would be the responsible party for the repairs and maintenance of that.
Still is.
Still is.
Yep.
Okay.
We'll build it and charge them, but unlike an overhead service, it's on them to repair it. And sometimes we work hard to try to educate members about that, because sometimes they're surprised and upset to find that out, because they know, in a typical aerial overhead line, it's on us. And it's kind of a strange thing, because it's our responsibility up to the pole, and then it's theirs underground, and then our meter is our responsibility, and then past the meter is theirs. So it's kind of it's a little bit different than a typical aerial service.
Rep Bailey.
Could you just back up again and just give me a little overview? And I think you probably told us this last year of how your Coventry plant works. Do you own it completely? And what is what's the price that you're getting out of that?
Sure. Yeah, we own it completely. There's 5 big Caterpillar engines that takes the methane, burn it, and they spin generators.
Mm-hmm.
We own it through a subsidiary called Coventry Clean Energy Corp, but it's wholly owned by us. And we have a long-term contract for the gas with Casella. And what was your second question? The cost.
Your cost.
It varies a little bit depending on what kind of work we're doing there, how much power it produces, how often it's down for maintenance, what kind of gas supply we're getting. But rough terms, 4 to 6.5, 7 cents. So very competitive. Very competitive. And that is in large part, we were, I believe that was the first landfill gas to energy plant in New England. It was a bit of a experiment, a bit of a trial run by us and Casella together. And so we got a very good price on the gas, which at that point had been just a waste product. So very, very good deal for our members. Of course, to have 65 to 70% of your power supply in one basket always makes you a little bit nervous.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
Just one. Now, methane's pretty corrosive. So how often will you be rotating out those generators?
The engines get rebuilt fairly regularly, but there's kind of 2 levels of rebuild. One that the operators do in-house, and that one's fairly frequent. Complete replacement of an engine is fairly rare, but the gas is cleaned quite significantly before it gets to the engine. We did just replace all of the gas piping that brings the gas into the plant, starting about 2 or 2.5 years ago or so. And we did that project. That was, don't hold me to the amount, but that was several $100,000 project. Because as you say, the gas is corrosive, and those used to be cast iron pipes. We replaced them all with stainless to try to get longer term life out of them. But it's corrosive stuff.
Yeah. Thank you.
Long-term contract with Casella, or is that coming up to where prices could change?
It ends in 2036 or 2038, I think 2038. Which is a challenge. One of the challenges that I'll get into in a minute is we have a lot of long-term contracts that all come due in the 2030s. As other utilities in the state do, but that's something we're looking forward at now.
Real quick.
So you have to clean the gas quite a bit coming out of the landfill, which is not the least bit surprising. How clean is it when it goes into the generators?
Well, it's hard to it's hard to say exactly. So we remove siloxanes, we remove water, and that's in order to make the burning efficient and also protect the machines. It's not natural gas. It's not pure like natural gas. There's still contaminants in it. And well, I don't know if I should say contaminants. It's still a mix of things that you would not burn in a natural gas burning engine.
Yeah.
I don't know what order. Okay.
Total capacity of
8 megawatts.
8 megawatts.
Yeah. And 24/7 base load.
And a capacity factor of 98.
Very, very high. I don't know if it's 98 because we do have maintenance shutdowns. The capacity factor in the 90s, I would say.
But the maintenance between the 5 engines rotates, so 4 are running most of the time.
Yeah, correct.
So capacity factor is the percentage of overall capacity on all the hours in a year.
We also throttle the engines back if there's a higher levels of oxygen in the gas to protect them. So we're not always operating at full capacity in order to protect the engines from damage.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was just wondering, so you're paying Casella for this contract, and they probably can't disclose how much, but I guess I'm wondering, I don't know, if you talk any more about how that works.
Sure. I mean, we pay them based on the volume of gas we use on the production. And they've been very good partners with us. Our operating is hand in glove with them, with their operation.
And you had to install the pipes and everything and all that stuff. And in one sentence, how do you do that? You just drill a hole in that?
Well, they do all the well field maintenance and operations.
Oh,
So
okay.
they oversee everything up to when it goes into the pipe coming to our plant.
Oh, I see. So you're good.
Which they would need to do anyway in order to flare the gas and to deal with it in any case. Yeah.
Rick Sebelius, and report.
Lois, what are you seeing for or projecting for load growth? Seeing and projecting, actually.
Yeah. So our Itron load growth forecast is roughly 3% a year, projected, which is pretty significant. We went 10 years or more without load growth. And so this is a change for us. So we're looking at about 3% a year load growth. The change in tax incentives on electric vehicles and chargers and things may have an impact on that. But that's basically what
So it's basically, the load growth is basically on electrification, not new.
it's both. I mean, we had 116 line extension applications last year. So it's both line extensions, new services, and also electrification. I would say electrification's probably leading in terms of load growth.
Rep Torrey, and then I'm mindful of the time.
Sure.
Sure. Just a quick comment that we had a great field trip to Coventry, the environment and engineering, and I recommend it. And then a question. So you mentioned electrification. How has that affected retail sales? Are you starting to get some of the benefits?
Mm-hmm. Yep. We are. And when you, we have never, and I'm proud of the fact that Washington Electric has worked hard to reduce its retail sales. We've spent many years, decades now, working on efficiency. Our residential members use less energy than the average in the state, even though we have a lot of single-family homes and a lot of older housing stock. That's partly due to our efficiency effort. So we worked hard in a way that a company that was not a co-op and not a nonprofit wouldn't be able to do, because we're not dependent on sales. However, when you sell a product and you sell more of it using largely the same systems, you can spread that overhead. Now, it's not a pure gain, because the substations need to be upgraded, lines need to be upgraded, transformers need to be upgraded. We've replaced 324 transformers in the last year, which is a tremendous number for us. And so, that's not all. It's not all just benefit, but there's a cost there too. Great. I will go on to the next slide, but just let me know when you need me to make way.
Okay, well, we've got, maybe by a little bit after 9:30, we should probably swap out
Great.
seats, because we have our next conversation starting at 10, and I want to give everybody
Sure.
a 5-minute break.
Rebecca's a lot more interesting than I am, so save plenty of time. So we had a great year, but the underlying challenges for us that have always existed remain. And the most basic one is that our territory exists. Washington Electric exists because our territory wasn't profitable to serve. And 86, 87 years ago, a bunch of folks, mostly farmers, and George Aiken got together to create the utility, because it wasn't served by the for-profit utilities that serve our territory. So our shorthand, our joke is, if you're in our territory and you're on a paved road, the power line next to you is probably Green Mountain Power. And if you're on a dirt road or it's in the middle of a field, it's probably ours. We have about 1,300 miles of line, about enough to go to the state of Georgia. 40% of that's off-road, and we have 12 members of our line crew. So, they each take 100 miles. We're in good shape. I mentioned the net metering penetration we have already. Not surprising, given an industry that is becoming more complicated and is in flux. The regulatory requirements are increasing, which places a challenge on a small entity such as ours that is obligated to meet all of the same regulatory obligations that all the utilities are, but with a smaller customer base. We have about 1.3% of total state electric load.
Do you guys create a virtual power plant and put batteries in these homes to?
We are just going into that territory now. And I'll get to that in a second in the next slide. We're just going into that world now. And last, member expectations are growing. Members are expecting more from their electric utilities. The members own Washington Electric, so that's their right to expect more, and we need to meet that. But it does mean that it's a very different business than it was 10 years ago. I'm frankly constantly amazed that it works as well as it does, because the entire system was built to go one direction, have big power plants and then go one direction out to people. And now it's going both directions, constantly switching during the day. And it works very well, given that that's not how it was designed. I always think about the highway system. And if you had all the lanes and all the highways, changing direction a few times a day, fortunately, the electricity is a little easier to manage than people. But it's amazing.
Yeah.
It's told usually, but it's amazing to me that it does work as well as it does.
Rick Bailey.
Do you have ski area
No.
in face down Northtown Facein?
No, we don't. We don't have any. We have very few. We have a few farms. We have a couple of schools, and that's basically our commercial and industrial load. We're over 95% residential. So our plan going forward is to rely on what has worked for us and continue with our tradition of being, a nonprofit, member-owned cooperative that's run by elected board members who are elected just as you all are, except from a smaller constituency, and continue to provide 100% renewable power. We are one of 3 in the state that do that now, and we have already met the res standard in that fashion, although there are res requirements that we are going to need to meet in terms of our load growth as well. As I mentioned, we're looking to the 2030s when our long-term contracts, for many of our long-term contracts for power supply expire. And I think our biggest asset is that we have a bunch of people working at Washington Electric who live in and near these communities and are devoted to them. So much so that they're willing to work for a utility that requires a lot more climbing of poles than a utility that has more of its lines next to the road. And that's a big ask for people because, you know, they get paid well, but they work incredibly hard to do what they do and keep the power on. Our partnerships are very essential to us as a small entity, and probably most important among those is our partnership with Vermont Electric Co-op. When I came into the job at Washington Electric, almost our entire leadership team had departed. Within a few months, we were $1 million in the red due to power supply. We did almost all of our work on paper, not digitally. We had just started working on energized power lines. So we had not embarked on a lot of the more innovative programs, and we relied a tremendous amount on Vermont Electric Co-op to help us, and they did. I'm proud to say that we're now in a position where I think we can make that partnership more one of equals and mutual benefit. So we're looking forward to doing that. But those partnerships with the federal government through RUS and FEMA, with VEC, with Velco, which now has fiber optic communication into all of our substations, and with our federal and state granting partners are very vital to us. As I should have put down here, as GMP is as well. GMP supplies most of our substations from their transmission system. So our plan going forward, we are embarking on a home battery and load management program, trying to catch up to Vermont Electric Co-op and their work there. And we're starting that this year. It's kind of a grant funded pilot project at first, but will be expanded. And it's basically a bring your own battery system where we will provide a benefit to members who agree to allow us to manage their battery to mutual benefit of themselves and the rest of the membership. We are also expanding our EV charger program, which is similar. Our kind of philosophy is 50% to the member who has the electric vehicle or the battery, 50% benefit to the rest of the membership. It doesn't always work out perfectly that way because it's very hard to perfectly align those incentives, but that's our goal, is to split the benefits. We are going to, as I say, remain 100% renewable. We need to address how Tier 5 and the new res is going to affect us. Basically, we need to meet our load growth through new renewables that are deliverable within the ISO New England system. With the faltering of offshore wind, that's likely to be more difficult and more expensive. But we will meet that obligation. We are also planning on building a utility scale battery at one of our substations this year, probably operational in 2027. Basically, that will be to avoid transmission and peak costs. So we'll discharge that battery, or rather our partner, our vendor will discharge that battery at peak times and reduce our load by that share of that battery. We're hoping that, like, as I say, we're going to do that this year and have that operational, we hope, in 2027.
Who are you working with on that?
We haven't signed with a contractor yet. We have an RFP out, and we have about half a dozen or 7 different potential vendors. Fortunately, we have somebody who works with us now who has a lot of experience in this area, because it's way more complicated than I can understand between the various contract types and the vendors and the batteries. It's way beyond anything I can understand. But fortunately, we have somebody who's done this for New Hampshire Electric Co-op and has a lot of experience.
Yeah.
Just to back up just quickly, how was the supply to get your transformers? The 320 boards, did you have any issues or do you have a long-term?
2 years ago, we were having tremendous issues getting 2.5 years ago. We had a lot of issues. Now we're pretty good. And we did what a lot of people did during that period. We started looking everywhere. So we entered into contracts with transformers of various companies. A lot of those contracts came in at the same time. So we're pretty well stocked now, and we have a good supply going forward. Pad mount transformers can still be difficult to find. Generally, the ones on the poles are fairly cheap.
All right, thank you.
Another one of our goals, and I will finish up on this. Another of our goals is to improve our outage response. We have $1 million right-of-way clearing budget. We're going to increase that to 1.5 million this year. We're using digital technology and tools in the field and in the office to a much greater extent than we used to. I sort of expected the line crew folks to I wouldn't say resist, but have to work into using those, and they've taken to them very well. I'm very grateful and encouraged by that. You can having a iPad in the field that tells you what lines are energized and what aren't, and what's going on in the system is obviously very helpful and important to you when you're out there, both for operational efficiency but also for safety. And we are working on doing greater and more thorough outage communications with our members, and expect to deploy AMI meters over the next several years, which will give us a lot more data about what's going on at the meters, a lot more efficient outage response we anticipate, and a lot more ability to serve members with different rates, different opportunities that will benefit them as well. So happy to answer any other questions I can.
I just have one, just going back to governance and financial transparency. So you have an elected board, and is it the board that takes a look at your budget and reviews your audits? And so it's basically the board is responsible for making sure that your finances are looking strong and looking good, and pushing back if they have questions.
Yeah, we have multiple levels of oversight on our financials. The board is the most active and the most in the weeds of that. I mean, they meet every month. We have a finance committee that reviews the budgets and any loans we're going to take out, anything like that. And so the finances are fully transparent to the board. But then we also have auditors, independent auditors that come in every year, look at our books. We also have the federal government, because we're an RUS borrower. The federal government is very into and very knowledgeable about our financial condition and financial decisions, financial health. And they are absolutely a dream to work with. I can't say enough good things about the RUS. They're responsive, they're helpful, they're generous, they're great. But they are another layer of protection. And then of course we have the Department of Public Service and the Public Utility Commission, which has various insight in the both short-term and long-term, prospectively and backward looking into our finances.
Right.
So we got quite a few layers.
All right, one quick question, and then we need to stop that.
Yeah, just following up on that, is there any kind of rating of financial health for utilities like your firm?
Yeah, we don't get bond rated, but we are rated by the RUS on what's called tier times interest earned ratio. And there are several other lender metrics that we get rated on. We borrow primarily from RUS. We also borrow from CFC, which is a nonprofit bank that exists to serve electric co-ops. So they have their own rating system that we're evaluated on as well. And we are meeting those metrics. Typically those metrics are a best 2 out of 3 years, but in recent years we've been meeting them every year. And any excess revenue that we bring in, we repay to members in the form of capital credits. Now, to our members' dismay, sometimes that takes a long time. It's 20 years before we pay you back because of the long-term nature of the investments and the importance of fiscal health in an essential business like ours. It's not as rapid as our members would like to get paid back, but we have paid back $1 million since $10 million since 1998.
But as far as the rating, is there a 1.25 or something like that?
Well, basically you have to meet 1.25 tier in order to qualify for RUS borrowing. And so we meet or exceed that.
And so what's your?
There's not a rating system like A+, like A minus, A, B, like there's in a bond rating system.
Yeah.
It's just you either meet it or you don't.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Rebecca, do you have slides to share?
I do.
Great. 1 second to get set up. Yep.
Little delay, but it's okay. Okay, good morning. Rebecca Town, CEO of Vermont Electric Cooperative. I've been in that role for 7 years, and before that spent time at Vermont Gas and Green Mountain Power. So I've been in the Vermont utility space for a lot of years. And I focus this presentation primarily on financial and governance metrics, but I really appreciated how your questions have been all over the map. So I'm hoping that will continue because I would
Welcome
love to
to
chat
room
about
32.
it. So you have these slides. This is just our vision and our mission. You'll notice since we started, our mission has been safe, affordable, reliable. We recently changed that to also include sustainable as part of our mission, and really have focused more, I would say, over the last 7 years on clean energy and what that looks like to our membership and in our power supply portfolio. Similar to what Lewis shared, we were established in 1938. We started in Eden. My farm family is actually I grew up in Cambridge in a farm family, and my grandfather would tell stories about helping set the poles, and what were then fields are now woods, which is one of the reasons we have such a big vegetation management budget. But a long history, and over the hills and dales to those rural areas that had not yet received electricity at that point. These are some of our critical metrics. So a couple of things that I want to point out here. Vermont Electric Co-op, we from a load perspective, about 8% of Vermont. That puts us as the second largest utility in the state. So that's our load. So that load is about 8%-ish. Our peak load's 86 megawatts. But what is interesting about that is that we have been for a long time a winter peaking system. We were still in the past year, but you'll see August came close, and that is being driven by two things. One is the changing weather. Summers are hotter, winters are a little warmer, and also Vermonters, as they acquire heat pumps for heating, are discovering air conditioning, and so that is really both delighting people and also changing the load profiles in the summer, which has been interesting. So we expect that we will start to be a summer peaking at some point in time. And interestingly, ISO New England is they are now summer peaking. They are expecting over the next 10 years or so to move to a winter peaking system. So we'll see if we flip flop or stay the same, but that does impact some of our costs because the lower our load is at ISO New England peak times, the less our percentage of those costs are. So we watch that very closely. We are about 50% residential. So we do have two ski areas. We have Smuggler's Notch and Jay Peak. Our largest commercial customer is Westrock, which is a boxboard manufacturer in Sheldon. And then the rest are just lots of small commercial, think grocery stores or things like that. And while we're a nonprofit, so we do not pay tax on our income. We do pay property tax, which runs about $4 million a year for us these days. And that is distributed between among 75 towns in Vermont. I want to just hit on this quickly, I think, to just give a sense of what our costs look like. So between purchase power and transmission costs, so effectively just getting the electricity onto our system is about 60% of our costs. And then the rest, you'll see labor is next, and then a lot of costs around distribution, things like running the control center and things like that, and vegetation management. So this is generally how a lot of this shows up. So even when our load increases, 60% of that is going right back out the door to just pay for the acquisition costs of whatever that power is to serve.
So is that transmission, is that just going to Velco, or is that, do you have?
It is a combination of Velco and ISO New England, and some of our own internal costs for managing some of the sub transmission that we have. Mostly it's ISO and ISO New England and Velco.
Based on megawatts or?
Yes, based on load at the time of peak, either the monthly Vermont peak or the annual New England peak. We every co-op, whether you're an electric co-op or a food co-op, we subscribe to the 7 cooperative principles, which is one of the things I actually really enjoy about being part of a cooperative. So it's open membership, your board is always elected. There's a couple things that I want to highlight here. One is the last one, concern for community. So it is based into the values of who we are as a co-op, that we are connected to our community. Also Lewis mentioned cooperation among cooperatives. We have an incredibly robust and incredibly helpful cooperative community, both in Vermont, in the Northeast, and then nationally. And then finally, the commitment to education, training, and information. We spend a lot of time with our board and with our membership on education, and that is again goes into who we are as an organization.
Yeah.
On the property tax issue, did your property tax drop after the reevaluation of all the, whatever that, 141 or 142?
Yeah, it was interesting. So first they went way up and then they went back down. So it went when everything was readjusted, ours went down a little bit, partially because there was more weighting on it was less about how many miles of line. We have a lot of miles of line, and more about revenue that was generated, percentage of sales in that town, and then also what assets you have in that town, substations and larger equipment. And again, we have more miles, but less of some of those other things. So it changed for us.
Thank you.
And I would just add, we are deeply
Yeah, sorry,
appreciative
stop, Brent.
consistent now. So every year it used to be whatever the towns would decide was their plan, and then we would just have to receive that. And now that there is an evaluation, it stays consistent, and we can anticipate that better to incorporate into our rates.
So this question kind of goes to both co-ops. With that reduction in property tax, did you show that in the savings to your rate makers or not?
Everything goes into rates. We're a not-for-profit, and so it's all of our costs and savings. Everything goes into that same rate-making device. So absolutely, it shows up into what would otherwise be our rates. Yes.
And if I could just respond, Lewis Boyer, Washington Electric, that's part of the money that we're able to defer from last year into this year, avoiding a rate case, because we booked, we budgeted for higher property taxes than we ended up paying in 2025. So we were able to take some of that savings and put it into this year's revenue instead, and avoid a rate case that way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
Is that tax, both, municipal and education tax paid on utilities?
That's a great
That's a
question.
great question.
I believe so, but it's not like a homestead tax. So it's
Well, no,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not, that, yes, the answer is yes, or maybe.
I can find out for you, but
At $4 million, I can't imagine some of
Yeah.
that's not going to education. Just
What's the
you know,
value
for
of
us.
both?
Right, but I'm, just knowing what percentage education taxes the town taxes usually, but I don't.
I'm sorry, I get skewed because it's the municipal rates in Rutland City and Rutland Town.
We have a 12-member elected board of directors, and they are elected by district and zones for us, so that they represent the different areas of our constituency. And as you can imagine, some of our members' perspectives from the Northeast Kingdom vary from what we see from the Champlain Islands, for example. And so that creates some really good member representation in the boardroom, and helps us cover all of that. This shows us as covering all of that area. I will just note there are a lot of carve outs for municipalities and other areas, but we do cover to the New York border, the Canadian border, and to the New Hampshire border. Wanted to just hit a little on director responsibilities around fiduciary responsibility. So we do have monthly board meetings. We have a board finance committee, which is chaired by our board treasurer. We also have an external audit similar to Washington Electric Co-op that is conducted every year and reports directly to the board of directors. And that is also reported out. Our financials and the results of the audit are reported out to our membership at the annual meeting every year. I mentioned also that we have an education requirement. We spend a lot of time educating our directors so that they understand how an electric company works, how a cooperative works, and how our financials work. So that starts with a day-long orientation when they begin, and then every year there, I would say about 50% of our board meetings are educational, and then there's also at a minimum of 2 full-day education sessions, and there's also conferences. So they get a lot of financial education throughout that process, even those not on the finance committee.
Is that the annual meeting?
That is our annual meeting. That's at J Peak.
Like more people than came to our town meeting this year.
We get
Free breakfast.
200 to 300. We joke
Free
it's the
breakfast.
bacon. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's great. And we alternate between J Peak and Smuggler's Notch so that we can cover two parts of our service territory. We do have a rating. We issue bonds, and we also participate as a market participant in ISO New England and have power supply contracts. And for both of those reasons, we participate in S&P Global's rating system. Since I have been at the co-op for 7 years, we have had an A+ rating with a stable outlook, and which is we're very proud of. And they look at that, I would say, in a formal way every 3 years, where we send a lot of financial information back and forth. We also send them quarterly financial reports, and they ping us anytime something interesting happens, like tariffs, or they see something in our financials that they have questions about. But overall, this has helped us have pretty favorable terms in our power supply contracts and not have to put up too much collateral, which is incredibly valuable.
So just a real quick second. So that's what I was asking. But you don't participate in this. Okay.
We don't, because we're not a market participant in the same way, and because of how we borrow.
We do not borrow through RUS. We borrow entirely through banks. We borrow from CFC and also CoBank, which both are cooperative banks that serve utility infrastructure. We publish all of our financial reports. We try to make sure that we are very transparent about what is happening. So anytime you want to check in what's going on, they're out there on our website. And this is our rate trajectory. So we just implemented a 2.99% rate increase effective January 1st. As you can see, it has been a while since we've gotten down to what inflation looks like. In 23 and 24, those were largely driven by the power supply markets. And while we are about 90% hedged with power supply contracts, we do not own any generation. So everything is through contracts. But even some of those contracts have market following provisions. So they will still go up when the market goes up. And although they have caps and limits on them, and some of that is also driven just 100% purely by market. So the markets went kind of crazy. Transmission costs also went up significantly those years because there were some capacity challenges within New England, and the solutions to those that were effective from making sure there was enough electricity, but they were not low cost. And then finally, just wage rates, which drives everything from our own payroll benefits to our vegetation management costs and what some of that looks like.
The concept that there's a term that you use, and now I'm going to watch it. So market following, your contracts have market following provisions. What
Correct.
percentage of your contracts have those provisions, would you say?
Oh, that's a good question.
Roughly. I know it's not fair actually
Let's
to
say
roughly, but
60%.
okay. So the majority.
The majority. So we get, and how I came up with that is we get about 55% of our power from Hydro-Quebec.
And that has.
And we have 2 Hydro-Quebec contracts. One is with all of Vermont, and one is our own because we connect through the Canadian border to Hydro-Quebec. So of all the utilities, we get the largest percentage from Hydro-Quebec. And both of those HQ contracts have market following provisions.
So when you say the ISO contracts, those are spot market, mostly natural gas generated increases. I mean, the increases in 23 and 24 mostly driven
When
by
we were
natural
on the
gas.
market, it was primarily driven by natural gas, correct? Yes.
Quick questions. How much does a rate case cost?
Well, that's a good question. These rate increases that we have done have all been internal labor hours, so we haven't really calculated them. So it's really just for us, time and energy and other things we could otherwise be doing. It takes hundreds of hours to put together a rate case.
Yeah.
What's your residential kilowatt hour rate?
At 22 cents.
That was gonna be, is that straight right across the board?
The first 100 megawatt hours is at a lower rate, and I
You do,
can't recall it off the top of my
Yeah.
head. And then it's lower after that.
And are you starting to do renegotiate with HQ now, or when did that process start? If you're gonna even consider that.
So that contract goes into the 2030s, and so not yet.
Okay.
So the previous person here talked about how net metering affects your, can you give us what you see on your end versus what they were seeing? Is it similar? Are you seeing an increased cost shift there as well?
Yeah, so we, similar to Washington Electric Co-op, our net metering, we have about 10% of our residential meters that are on net metering. For us, the impact of that 10% is a little different because we're 50% commercial industrial and 50% residential, so it doesn't have the same revenue impact for us. But we estimate, and this number is a little old, but the last estimate that we did 2 years ago was just over 2 million. I want to say $2.4 million of cost shift between other members and then those who are net metering.
Thank you.
And then the last thing I wanted to talk about is reliability. So when we survey our members every year, and we resoundingly hear the same thing from them every single year, which is the most important thing to them by far is affordability. And the second most important thing to them is reliability. And if those two things don't line up, then they don't care so much about the rest of it. So this is our reliability information. The top graph is frequency. So on average, how frequently do our members experience an outage every year? And then the bottom graph is duration. On average, how long minutes are those outages? And the two different lines, you'll see our goal. We have a statewide goal that we share with our regulators. And the bottom one is without storms. And that is what we are measured against for the goal. And the top line is with storms. So you can see two things. One, much more erratic through the years. So that is less controllable for us. So for us, we're very proud that the more controllable sort of everyday stuff, we very much exceed those metrics and also are pretty stable through the years. And storms really do a number on what those outage statistics look like. We did have one major storm in December of this year. It was about 48 hours, cost about $500,000. So we were lucky that this year was better than some. And as you can see, 22, 23, 24, they were rough. We also, similar to Washington Electric Co-op, spend a lot of time. We spend about $14 million per year on our capital plan. The majority of that is on our transmission and distribution system. And we also get FEMA dollars whenever we have the opportunity. We've been able to have millions and millions in FEMA projects. Actually, we just have 3 projects that were approved from Storms Finn and Jerry, so back in the beginning of 2024. And so we'll be working on those the next couple of years to get those in place. And the whole goal is to just find areas that continue to be vulnerable and to improve the reliability in those areas. We anticipate about a 1 to 2% growth in sales every year over the next, you call it 15, 20 years, however long you think those projections are worth. And most of that driven by electrification. So where we can, we're also looking for where do we see growth happening? How do we pair that with reliability? And how can we capture value for both of those future needs through one capital?
Yeah, so 1, 2, 3.
Quick question about the cost shifting question. That's 2.4 million. How would we relate that to a percentage or something? It was talking about total revenue or something, or?
Yeah, that's 2.4 million annually. So our total revenue is 100 million. So that's
2.4%.
Yeah.
And is that percentage around the same for you all?
Little higher for us. Yeah. We have a $23 million revenue basically and about $1 million.
Okay, thanks.
But first of all, I think the fact that cost and reliability are at the top of your customers' lists is a testament to the fact that your electricity rarely damages people or property, so safety is not in mind. So congratulations on keeping your people safe. But related to that, you'd added sustainability to your goals. And I'm wondering about security in terms of how many cyber attacks you get and how you're protecting your grid from bad guys.
Yeah, that is an increasingly important topic, I would say. So we have a cyber team, and I can go into much detail about all of the cyber plans we have. We have a matrix that we sort of work against improving in all of these areas to improve our cybersecurity. So we take it pretty seriously, and certainly as we're seeing AI grow, the cyber attacks are increasing. We report our cyber attacks and what that looks like to our board every month. We get hundreds, if not thousands, of cyber attacks all the time, but most of them are just run of the mill and stopped immediately by the systems that we have in place. And so what we're really focused on is anything that gets through sort of those first couple of lines of defense. We also we have a cyber incident response plan, and we are working to build and improve our business continuity plans. So we spend a lot of time on cybersecurity, physical security, of course, as well, but also cybersecurity.
Did I understand you to say that AI is generating attacks on your system now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yours too.
Thank you.
No, thanks.
Last question,
That prompts a whole bunch of other questions.
which you will save for the future.
Yes, I will, Madam Chair. Permitting costs.
Yeah.
On an annual basis, do you have a sense of what that looks like for you, kind of on the regular?
I would have to cycle back on that, but certainly, tens of thousands per project for sure. If we're in an area that, these FEMA projects that I was just talking about, we have 3 FEMA projects. We're delighted. They're in wetland and bat habitat. And so we will probably spend, 10 to 40,000 per project on that permitting.
Yeah, I would be interested in just
Sure.
if you're able to share the last few years,
Sure.
knowing that you all need to move and harden the lines, understanding what additional costs you're encountering. Thanks.
Great. Thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you being here. So here's the plan. We're going to go offline and we will go back on live in 5 minutes. So that's going to give everybody time to switch up and get set. Okay. All right. Thank you so much.